Hey everybody, it's me. Back again for more Ask a Witch, and I have some things that I have posted about it. I posted a schedule of what the next ones will be, so that you can plan and just watch the ones that you care about, that sort of thing. Today's is on ethics and etiquette in the magical community. And so I want to address those things today as thoroughly as I can in a half hour. But also, if you have any questions about anything, just let me know, and I'm happy to answer those. From any of the previous vlogs as well as the vlog that we're doing today. So let me just begin by starting with ethics. I think it's really, really important early on to talk about ethics because I think a lot of people don't really think about ethics when it comes to spiritual practice. We have some interesting ideas about what's ethical in culture but in the religious genre, it seems like there's a lot of people who don't really think there's any rules. And there's not really any rules per se, but the thing is, the whole idea of, do unto others. That's what the harm none rule is about, and it harm none, do what you will. Basically means don't hurt anybody, and think about what you're doing. Be here now, be present. Think about the effects of what you're doing might have on other people or animals or nature or any of that kind of stuff. So your first consideration with ethics should always be, will my actions harm another person? The Wiccan Rede, which also talks about the law of three, basically is a different way of looking at things than you generally find in more organized religions. For example, I grew up Catholic, and in Catholicism, you can do pretty much anything you want and then go to a confessional and confess it. And if it's confessed to a priest and you do the prayers that you're told to do, then you're forgiven. And that's the end of it. You don't have to, deal with any further repercussions. Switches, we kind of have a different view of that. Our view is that if you do something bad, then you're probably going to get that back. And the law of three says threefold. Now, it can come back as three separate things, or it can come back as one whopper of a thing. I've experienced both in my years of practicing. And in other magical traditions, such as, for example, I have a priestess friend who's from Santeria tradition. And, she said, when you point your finger at someone and say something to them, if you curse them or whatever, there are three fingers pointing back at you, which, means that you're going to get that energy as well. So think about what you do. Now, there's other aspects of ethics that I've been asked about over the years. Like, for example, what is the right protocol in terms of ethics in terms of circles or magical practice or teaching? And I know that the opinion in wider culture is that any kind of spiritual practice, ceremonies or classes or things like that should be free. And I think that comes from a time when people didn't exchange money for these things. If you go into any shamanic culture and, you want them to do a ritual on your behalf, you're expected to bring something, a chicken or, something that you have, anything you have to offer. You need to remember that teaching a class in magic or doing a ritual or healing, anything like that, is energy. And in the old days, the way that things were dealt with was if you needed something from the old shaman woman or whatever, you would go to her and you would offer her something in exchange for that energy. As a student, if you are going to become an apprentice of someone who had knowledge in esoteric arts, you would work for them. You would clean out the horse stalls, or you would clean up after the pigs, or you would cook for them, or you would gather herbs or something like that. Today, we don't think about that stuff because what we have today is our main medium of transfer is cash, money. But money, isn't everything. And a lot of teachers do accept energy for energy, but they do expect something to come back. Because if I'm going to spend a lot of energy apprenticing you in magic, or if I'm going to teach you about magical herbalism, or if I'm going to, spend a lot of my time and energy, sharing with you the things that I know, then you should be spending some time and energy helping me complete tasks that I would be otherwise doing if I wasn't teaching you. So, since a lot of people hold full-time jobs and can't do that, then cash becomes the thing that people give you instead of time. That doesn't mean being paid for work is a bad thing. I have people say that same thing to me about herbalism. Oh, you should do that for free. And eat what? That's my question. I mean, honestly, we all have roles in society. We all have things to offer. And if my expertise is magical or my expertise is herbal, then we should be exchanging like for like. We should be exchanging, energy for energy. That is what's ethical. And so don't ever let anybody tell you that being paid for ritual or being paid for classes is wrong. Now, I do think there are people who take it way too far. I mean, I've seen some situations where people are charging astronomical amounts of money, thousands of dollars for like a Wicca 101 class, which I think is crazy. I think it depends on how much energy you're putting in. Like, for example, the formula I usually use if I'm teaching classes that I think is ethical, and I find that my students generally think it's ethical, is about $10 per hour. So if I'm going to spend 4 hours with you, then I'm being paid $10 per hour by you, or the equivalent thereof in trade. And if I have 5 students, then of course I'm making $50 an hour, but each student is still only paying me $10 an hour for my expertise, and they are getting my personal attention. So in my opinion, I think that's an ethical way to go with teaching magic or teaching herbalism or teaching anything like that that's energy for energy. Remember, your time is valuable as well, and so it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing, too, is the idea, the ethics of having a fee for a ritual or for a gathering. Keep in mind that the priestess or coven or group that's hosting that is paying for candles and smudge sticks and incense and possibly renting a space to be able to do that. And so, if it's a space in someone's home and it's a small situation, still, even then, it's really polite and ethical to offer something to the group that's holding it. Bring some food, or put $5 in the offering basket, just like many people would do at church. Keep in mind that this is not a church where you sit in the pews and listen. Wicca and magical practice is a group of traditions that expects you to get up off your butt and participate. And if you don't really know how to participate, and you have to rely on, observation and learning because you don't know how to participate in other ways, then as I said, bring food, or put some cash aside for the cost of candles and incense and things like that. The priestess's job is not to carry you. She isn't being paid, or the priest is not being paid to do these things like a priest would be, and they still do have to pay for all of the equipment and all of the candles and things like that. So, if that burden can be, lightened by those who are participating, then it's absolutely ethical to ask people to contribute to the cost of holding a large circle, for example. In one of the coven situations that I was in, we used to charge, it would depend on the event, but we used to charge $25 to $35 for a weekend, which I think is very reasonable when you consider how many workshops are $500 for a weekend. And people would come, and they had to, participate. They could help be the gate guardian, or they could help organize the food, or they could teach a class, or they could help with a ritual. But they still had to contribute because we had to rent a campground, and we had to buy ribbons for the Beltane maypole and all that kind of stuff. And we, we're just people like you are, and we, need help with that stuff. Everybody, is always, struggling with the whole money issue. So contribution is an ethical thing that you need to remember, that even if the priestess doesn't ask you for anything. If you're going to a ritual with a group and the priestess doesn't ask you for anything, ask if you can help. Ask if there's something you can bring. Can I bring food? Could I bring wine for the circle? Could I bring cakes for the ritual? Could I help with a little cash for the candles and incense? And let me tell you, you will always be invited back. Because one of the things that's really stressful is always being expected to provide without support. In the old days, the shamans and priests and priestesses were always supported by their community in various ways. They were fed, or there was people who would help work for them and to learn in exchange, things like that. So it's not a situation where the priest or priestess owes you anything. They're taking their time and their energy and using it on your behalf. So be grateful and be thankful and be sharing. Now, in terms of ethics of magic, the rules basically are this. Don't do anything that steps on anyone else's free will. So don't do any spells to make them do something like fall in love with you or give you money or anything like that. All that stuff is unethical. Whenever you interfere with a person's free will, that's going to give you back some of that law of three karma. You're going to get that back. And so you really need to think about, how you do your magic. If you are going to do spell magic, it needs to be fairly general. A lot of the old traditional books that we had back 30 years ago would say things like, don't ask for money, ask for the shoes you want, or ask for the shawl that you want, or ask for the thing that you want. And it will come to you. The universe doesn't necessarily understand the abstract monopoly aspect of paper money. That's a human construct, and it's only reason it has any powers because we all agree that a piece of paper that has a number written on it has power. The universe, I'm sure, thinks that's flippin' hilarious. And so, it's like asking for money is like, oh, so you want some paper. Okay. But if you ask for a pair of shoes, that's something, I need shoes because my feet are bare and it's cold. That's a more real thing. That's something that I think that the spiritual world can understand, that the physical body has specific needs. And so asking for those things is fine. Just ask for them generally. Don't ask for them from a specific person. Also, things like doing magic on someone else's behalf. Whenever you do some magic on someone else's behalf, keep in mind that you're then tangled up in their reality, their energetic reality. So you want to really think twice about that. For example, if there's some giant drama going on in their relationship life and they would like you to do a binding for them, for example, which does interfere with a person's free will because it's stopping someone from hurting you or someone else. It's not necessarily unethical to do that, but keep in mind that if you step in there as a shield, think about that, logically, I'm a shield, you could be shot at. You're going to get splash damage, and it's not going to be very fun. So you want to think about, stuff like that you do. Is this person really have a good reason for doing this? Are they really being threatened? Are they likely to be harmed? Or is this just some personal drama? It's really important if you're doing magic on behalf of another person to be clear on that. Also, nothing like a love spell. Never, ever, ever do that. And here's the reason why. Not just karmically why. Well, karmically bad because you're interfering with another will, but finding the person, the soulmate, or the relationship that you came here to have has a set of steps to it that you had probably agreed to before you came here in the physical form. And when you try to sidestep that and force things into place, it's never good. And what if you do a love spell to get someone bonded to you and then you decide you can't stand them? That's bad for them and for you because, it's going to suck. It really is going to suck. So, in terms of ethics, don't step on anyone else's free will. Share your energy. Don't expect someone else to just carry you when it comes to ritual. Offer to help, offer to feed, offer to contribute, because that person is giving you a gift, of their time and their energy, and they need support from the community. There's nothing more exhausting than constantly doing stuff for the community and having no energy come back to you. It's just draining. So, as far as ethics go, keep in mind remember the first part of the Wiccan Rede is, and it harm none, do what you will. And it harm none. That means anyone, any person, any animal, anyone. So think about what you do. It's really, instead of having a whole list of things, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this other thing, it's basically be conscious, be aware, watch what you're doing. Don't just do stuff, think about what you're doing. Be mindful. How many religions say that? Lots of religions are always talking about be mindful. Well, that's what the Wiccan Rede pretty much says. Be mindful. Don't do any magic that you haven't thought well out. Okay? The second part of this is on etiquette. And circle etiquette is important because it can really go south really fast if people don't know how to behave. One of the things I used to do in my academic life is I would require my students to go out and observe some kind of religious activity and write about it. And so some of my students would choose Wiccan circles. And they would go out into the world and they would, come back with a paper that they had written. And sometimes they would be circles that I was actually attending or even leading. I've had students not know that I was leading a ritual because I don't generally go by my teaching name when I'm going to lead a ritual. I often go by Sibyl or Crone Witch. And, here they are. Oh, it's my teacher. And then they want to sit in a chair outside the circle so they can observe it. Well, that's just not allowed. And there's reasons why. So I'm going to talk about some of the things etiquette that is important if you're going to a circle with other people. The first one is this is not a church. You are expected to participate. You are not expected to sit in the pews and let the person up front do all the work. You are the weakest link if you do that, and you are a danger magically to everyone in the circle. So participate, be focused, be aware, be present, be mindful when you are in the circle. Don't go in and out of the circle without having the priestess or priest cut you out. Whenever we make a magic circle, we're creating a bubble of energy. And some people just think it's okay to get up and walk in and out and visit and whatever else. And that isn't acceptable. First off, because that bubble of energy is protective. You are between the worlds energetically. And so there are things that are wonderful about that. There are also things in the universe that are not so nice. And that circle is a protective space, and you go back and forth punching holes in it, you're exposing everyone to not so positive energies. So don't do that. If you need to go out to go to the bathroom, that's fine. Wait for a pause and ask one of the circle people that has put the circle together to cut you out, to make a hole in the circle and close it behind you so that when you come back from the bathroom, we can let you back in and we don't expose everyone else to whatever energies might be floating around at that moment. Don't talk or giggle or tease during ritual. You should be at full attention. Now, not that there can't be fun. I've had lots of rituals where there was lots of giggling and laughing and fun. That's not a bad thing. What's bad is if the priestess or priest are talking or reading or doing something in the circle that's meaningful and you're talking under your breath and giggling like kids at school. That's very distracting to the priestess. It's very distracting to the rest of the people in the circle and can cause the energy to become errant and uncontrollable and is just not a safe thing, nor is it a respectful thing. This person is taking time out of their day. They have researched. They have prepared for this. And, you really should be respectful in the circle. The no standing or sitting outside the circle rule is really for your own protection, because if you're outside the circle, remember all those energies I mentioned earlier, then you're susceptible to them. Anytime you open a magic space, you attract a lot of energy. And some of the energy is really positive and some of the energy is not so much. And the circle and the guardians of the different directions are there to protect you from any energies that might be harmful, any beings that might not have your best interest at heart. There are lots of things in the universe that we don't entirely understand. And we've all, I think most of us have had experiences with spirits and ghosts and things that maybe never even were in a body that are attracted to magical practice. It is always a good idea whenever you open a magical doorway to do that with a circle around you. And this is one of the reasons why things like Ouija boards are so dangerous, because people don't know anything about a Ouija board. They don't realize that they're opening a doorway, and they just open a big wide doorway. It's like a beacon to all the supernatural beings that might be nearby. And and then there they are. I've seen things like possession with that. I've seen things like beings that follow the person around for weeks afterwards. Bad. It's a bad idea. Ouija boards are a bad idea. No one should ever use one of those unless they know how to call spirits and they know how to protect themselves. This is not a toy, and it is not something that general practice people who don't know how to cast a circle and don't know how to protect themselves should ever get or open the box of. Just saying. I could tell you stories. Another aspect is, of course, bringing food, share food. There's almost always some kind of, exchange of food afterwards. And, think about what you're bringing. Like, I've been in circles where everybody brings a great dish. Everybody thinks about it. They prepare for it. They bring something healthy for the body, because healthy body is able to be clearer spiritually and mentally. And then I've been in circles where people bring, like a bucket of chicken from Colonel Sanders and some potato chips, and I'm just thinking, okay, this isn't, in my opinion, an example of mindfulness. If we're going to be sharing food, think about your sisters and brothers in circle, and how is that healthy for them? I mean, you really want to give them something that could give them cancer? Is that really the energy you want to bring in? Or, do you want to bring something that's nurturing and healing to your magical brothers and sisters? And then the topic of personal therapy. Everyone's been in a circle where somebody just takes over the circle, and they're going on and on and on about what's going on in their life and how hard it is. And while we understand sometimes life is really, really hard, and the circle is the place to take that energy and put it in the fire, or take that energy and cleanse it, or take that energy and transform it, it is not the place to make everyone in that circle your therapist for the next hour. If you need therapy, go to a therapist. Or make an appointment with a priest or priestess that can energetically help you, independent of a circle. Because let me tell you, everybody in the circle does not want to hear it. We want to support each other. We want to, be there for you. But at the same time, if it's something that is a really complex problem and it's really affecting you, and is taking your attention away from the energy that's being made, the magic that's being made in the circle, then it should be saved for another time. I know that sounds harsh. It really does. But honestly, you cannot expect a circle of, 15 or 20 or 100 people to be your personal therapist when things are tough. Definitely if you are invited to throw something in the fire, or to speak something that you'd like to have come into your reality, say that, do that, but keep it short. Be respectful that there are other people in that circle that also have things that they want to express, and their energy is just as important as yours is. Also, the aspect of children. This is a hard one for me, because I've always had children, and I've always wanted to bring them to circle, but there are times when it's just not appropriate. And not everyone gets that. It's kind of the same thing with people and their dogs, people who just bring their dogs to everything. And while I understand that you love your dog, the dogs oftentimes can be very distracting and, can be a problem. We had one Beltane where we had a big bunch of people who were camping, and one of the coven members' husband brought their dogs. And while that wasn't in itself an issue so much, what was an issue is the lack of control of the dogs, and the dogs were peeing on people's altars and stuff like that, and that was absolutely unacceptable. And so, like with pets, children should be managed. If you want to bring your children to circle, that's wonderful. I mean, you can't expect any religious practice to continue if children are not welcome. Children should be welcomed into circles. Certain circles, especially circles that are focused on new life, renewal, things like that. But also keep in mind that we have social rules that may preclude the attendance of children to some rituals. Like here in Washington, the rule is that you cannot be naked in front of anybody under 14. And that is state law. It doesn't have anything to do with anyone complaining. if word gets out that there's, naked people dancing around a maypole in front of a 5-year-old, everyone could be arrested, and it could be a very serious problem. So it's really important to keep in mind what is appropriate and legal in your state where you are doing things with children present. Children, though they are our children, the state does not consider us to have autonomous control of the situation with children. Children are considered to be protected and looked out after by the state, and therefore, if you want to hold a ritual that's going to have skyclad, for example, practice, then you need to be aware that children should not be present. Not because being naked is a bad thing or an evil thing or anything like that, but because you could be arrested. And that is not something you want in your circle. Something to really consider in circles. Otherwise, I think children should be allowed to come. Children should be taught to be respectful. They should be taught to have moments of peacefulness where they can be quiet, participate within certain parameters. If they cannot control themselves, if they're running around during the circle, or they can't stop talking, or it's all about them, then they have to be taken aside and talked to by the parent. That behavior cannot be allowed. It's too distracting. It takes energy away from everyone else who's there. And while I understand that children aren't always under control, in circle, just like in church or in court, those children would be expected to behave themselves. And so that is something that has to be considered. And you should always ask, like if you're going to someone's house for circle, you should ask if you're bringing your children. Unless they have expressly said, bring the kids, you should ask, is it okay to have my kids? Can I bring my kids? Can I bring my dog? Can I bring, any of that stuff? You should always ask, because when a person invites you to circle, they're inviting you. And, unless they tell you, bring your family, you should not assume that it's okay to bring everyone. Also, one of the rules, that this is one of my own pet peeves, don't sip sick. When you're passing a chalice around a circle, and may you never thirst, if you're sick, thank the person who handed you the chalice and pass it on. Do not make everyone in the circle sick. Okay, your sip of the sacramental wine is not more important than everyone else's health. And so that is, in my opinion, personal responsibility. Now, some covens and groups will have little cups for everyone. My only difficulty with that is it's so wasteful. I mean, we have so much plastic and paper in landfills in the ocean and all of that I don't really think we're going to die if we share a few germs. But if you're actively sick, you really don't want to share that energy with everyone in the circle, right? So just pass it on. Just pass it on. Also, keep in mind that this is a sacred space for everyone. It's not just for you, and it's not just for the coven that's doing it. They're often doing it because they want to help the community to share in the energy of that particular, time or event or whatever. And so keep in mind that the circle is for everyone. Everyone should be able to access and share energy equally. And so give space for that. It's not always about you. It's about everyone. It's about the community. It's about connection with community. It's about standing strong in magic together. That's really a big thing, big part of it. So those are my main points for today. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about ethics or etiquette in circle. If anyone has anything a problem that they've come across in circle that they would like to bring up or ask about, I'd be happy to answer those questions. The things that I've talked about are the things that, I have dealt with over 30 years of practice and over 7 years in a coven holding circles for lots and lots of people. It's a lot of people don't really have the best manners. One of the other issues I dealt with one time, we were doing a Beltane, and we let people come whatever day they wanted to come. And so a bunch of people just came on the day of the maypole dance, which by the time we'd been there for 2 days already, we had already whipped up a huge bunch of energy, and we were already in the zone. And those people walked in, and it was too much for them. They were not grounded. They didn't know what they were stepping into. The magic was so big, and some of them got sick. They couldn't handle it. So, okay, question. How do you handle it if someone is using a circle as a therapy session? Well, the way I've handled it as the directing priestess is when they take a pause, as they, start to go into it and you start to realize that that's what it is, you say, okay, thank you very much for sharing that. I really appreciate your presence in the circle. I need to have a moment now for someone else to be able to put their energy into the circle as well. But we can certainly talk about this later if you would like. And that's a very definitive way of saying, okay, that's it. You're done. Nicely. But also allowing someone else to be able to say what they need to say or do what they need to do, especially in a situation where they have already been asked. And then I also have another question or a statement. Reminder to be respectful, to silence phones and be present. Yes, absolutely. Silence phones. And actually, if you really should just leave your phones in your bag outside of circle. And here's a couple reasons why. Number one, they distract you. Number two, I don't know what microwaves do in terms of magical energy, but it can't be good. And, three, electronic things are often affected by big magic. Some people are so intensely energetic that they do things like fry watches. My mother-in-law used to fry watches. She couldn't wear them for more than a few days and they just would stop. Brand new watches just stopped. Electrics in her car too. She finally stopped driving. And so, the energy in a circle gets really big and it can really affect electronic things. And well, cell phones are, $800. Do you really want to fry that in a circle? I just don't think so. So leave it in your bag. There is nothing that needs to happen on that cell phone while you're in circle. Nothing that's so important that you can't put that thing away. I'd say the same thing to my anthropology students. I only have you for an hour and 15 minutes. Put the phone away. There's nothing you need to do that's more important than what you're doing right here, right now. Be present. Yes, absolutely. So any other thoughts or questions before I sign off? We're a couple minutes over, but that's fine. And then next week, I think we're doing the solitary versus coven work. And so definitely, if you're interested in the differences between those two things, tune in. And then another question I have, is there certain clothes that you should wear? I guess it depends on the circle you're doing. The old tradition of ritual is said to be skyclad, which means naked. So, yeah, in that situation, we're talking about shedding our ego, shedding all of our pretense. I do think that if you are doing circle with a group of people, you should be respectful. I think if you're wearing things that are not necessarily distracting to other people, but things, it depends on the circle. Honestly, really depends on the circle. Sometimes like Beltane circles, I've seen, women in a net dress and wow. But everyone's wearing stuff like that. So if it's a circle like that where, we understand that being revealing or having a sort of risque aspect to it is expected or is part of it, is allowed, I guess would be a better way to put it, then that's fine. But mostly you want to wear something comfortable because frankly, when you're in circles, sometimes circles can last an hour or more and you might have to sit down on the ground for a section or you might have to walk on uneven terrain. So some good shoes, some pants probably, or some leggings under a skirt. Cloaks, I wear a cloak because it keeps me warm. If I'm doing ritual in the wintertime, I have a cloak with a hood because I get cold. I'm almost always barefoot in circle, even if it's 20 degrees outside, because I really want my feet to touch the earth. But I think it really depends on the circle that you're in. I think, again, the big thing to keep in mind is respectfulness. Being respectful of others in the circle. Find out ahead of time if there are any dress requirements. If someone invites you to circle, ask them, so what should I wear? Are we going to be outside? Are we going to be inside? Should I wear pants? Are we going to be, what are we going to be doing? And it's so totally okay to ask that because what that tells your priestess is that you're prepared, that you care enough to be prepared. So I think that's very important too. So is there any other questions or thoughts that anyone has that they would like to share? We are at 7:04. I can give you one more minute. Are we good? All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Ask a Witch. And next week we'll be back here at 6:30 to talk about the, solitary versus coven practice and what the difference is, and also that question that came up earlier a couple weeks ago on when did solitary become solitaire. I have done some research on that, and I think I have a pretty good answer for that. So I will see you all next week. Thank you so much, and blessed be. Okay. See if I can